Well, thanks a lot for staying with us here on Sunrise Live on E on this Hope Day Wednesday. Now, under the theme Connecting People to Nature, the world celebrates World Environment Month during this month with the purpose of appealing to communities across the globe to appreciate as well as protect the natural environment. It was, in fact, during Minister Edna Molewa's budget vote earlier this month where she emphasized on the importance of the environment as well as plans to create about more than 100,000 jobs and support SMMEs, especially when looking at various sectors of industry within the environment themselves. So to talk more about the importance of World Environment Month, we are joined in studio now by the spokesperson from the Department of Environmental Affairs, Albi Modise. Remember, as always, you can be part of our conversation. Remember that number to dial is 011 447 1742, alternatively 1620, and also you can leave your comments on our Facebook as well as our Twitter pages. Albi, welcome once again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Good morning.
Now, it's a very interesting theme that you guys have got this year, connecting people to nature. What was the stance about connecting people to nature? What message are we trying to propagate with it?
Remember, South Africa operates within a broader global program. So the Connecting People to Nature theme is a theme that's not only embraced by South Africa, so it's a global theme. But for us, it's very apt because we are a country that is the third mega diverse in the world. Now, it means globally, South Africa occupies the third spot in terms of the most species of animals and diverse plants that you can find in our country, which are at the heart of the growth of our ecotourism sector, but also it becoming a tourist destination for most people across the world. So it's that particular realization, but also a recognition of the fact that even traditionally, African communities have always had a connection with nature, whether it's around agriculture, whether it's around how they use different plants for medicinal purposes and all of those connections. So it's not a foreign concept at all to South Africa and to Africa. It's a connection, it's a concept that we live with every day. But this month we use it to just heighten awareness about our engagements with nature, the water that we drink, the air that we breathe, things that we take for granted that are there for us, that nature gives to us, that we have to look after and ensure that as we pass the world on to the next generation, it's in good, impeccable conditions that we found it in.
Well, obviously, we're going to go into various issues around how is it that we can best preserve the environment, but you're speaking about something very interesting here about how Africans have always been connected to nature and have always used plants or animals or etc. for purposes of being able to provide a service. In other words, solve a problem, therefore providing a service. And this is speaking significantly to the biodiversity economy, which I believe that it will be launched, and the minister herself has promised to really capacitate that specific sector within the environment. Now, when we're looking at this biodiversity, we sometimes tend to miss it a little bit. What are we speaking about firstly?
It's about the living animals, it's about the plants, it's about how we relate with our plants. I mean, we use lotions in the morning and you find there's cocoa butter in your lotion. We use different medicines that come from different plants. And remember, the growth of the pharmaceutical industry in the world, it's also based on the fact that most of those companies use traditional medicines, but they westernize them. They take different plants that different communities have used over the years. I mean, just about a few years ago, we launched a program called bioprospecting program, which is part of what is now referred to, and you correctly pointed out, the broader biodiversity economy plan. And in that particular plan, we talk about that bioprospecting. So effectively, bioprospecting is about certain communities have used certain plants over years to suppress hunger when they go out and hunt. Now, pharmaceutical companies use that very same plant
as a weight loss regime.
As a weight loss regime. Now, you need to find a way of recognizing the traditional knowledge of those communities.
Okay, I'm going to ask you this because this is a fantastic opportunity to further expound on the matter. And of course, we invite you, as always is at home, to be part of our conversation this morning. Give us a call if you want to know what opportunities that are available within the department in itself, especially if you're an SMME. I mean, we've got about 100,000 jobs that are supposed to be created, and we've got that budget vote that came out where SMMEs are actually the target, which brings me to my next question now of if we're in the biodiversity economy and then we want to capacitate that economy in itself, many would say, okay, let's say that I recognize the significance of an aloe plant used for generations, the aloe plant, right? However, when we're looking at those that would seek to take and use the nutrients and the value of the aloe plant, be able to package it and make the actual selling point themselves, let's have an honest conversation here. Many of the times these businesses just cap at being small enterprises simply because they're either swallowed by the major pharmaceutical companies, as you rightfully mentioned. Number two, the pharmaceutical companies themselves don't like the idea of having the competition of it. They may have the right value, they don't like the competition. So our families have been using aloes for generations, and it ends up in a small little store or in a small little spaza. How then do we start capacitating those SMMEs and helping them go against the big guys?
Look, you didn't have what we now talking about, the biodiversity economy strategy. Yeah. The reason why the strategy was crafted was because we realized the fact that there are all of those smaller interventions, and there's a whole lot of SMMEs that are beginning to mushroom in that space. And the biodiversity economy strategy takes its cue in the main from the National Development Plan, which advocates a totally different regime altogether for South Africa. Job creation, you know, having a totally different mindset altogether in terms of how we engage with the environment. But in the bigger scheme of things, the growth of the green economy. That's an economy where...
perhaps what I'm asking you, Albi, is that if I'm an SMME and I've recognized the opportunity of using even manure, right, for purposes of either medicinal or even cosmetic purposes themselves, I'm an SMME, I'm from Ilanga somewhere, am I able to come to the department and say, guys, this is my product, right? Through this biodiversity economy, help me capacitate this product so that I can compete with the major standing pharmaceutical companies, cosmetic companies that have been championing this for years as an SMME. Can I come to your door?
So those are the SMMEs that you referred to when you highlighted the areas that the minister was talking about. So those are the SMMEs that the minister says we need to work very hard to ensure that we create opportunities for them to be able to access the bigger markets, because for jobs to be created, you need to get SMMEs to become a very integral part of the growth of the economy, but also in a sustainable fashion, so that they don't stop being a small spaza shop somewhere in the Northern Cape, somewhere there, that they must become part of the bigger program. But remember also that what you're also seeing is that these big companies that you referred to, they also have to pay royalties to some of those traditional communities. So we've had similar programs with the Sand communities, where Skeletium, for an example, and some of the different plants that are used to produce different products, like when I referred earlier on to the fact that traditional communities have used plants to suppress hunger over a longer period of time. They are being used for diet purposes. So it's that particular realization of the current existence of those peripheral, on the fringes, SMMEs that need to be brought into the mainstream. So basically what you're saying to me right
now is that the answer is yes, you are able to capacitate. I'm going to ask you something further, and I know that we're going to touch on issues around the environment, how to best preserve our waters. I know that the Yukskay River, for example, is the major one, how to not litter, bane of my existence. But let's talk a little bit about the wildlife, right? The sector, that industry. One would say we can't even talk about a transformation agenda within that wildlife industry. And the simple fact is because significantly that industry is capacitated by white-owned companies or white-owned individuals. In other words, you and I are sitting on television having a conversation. Someone is buying a giraffe currently. We had a big hoo-ha when the Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa bought a buffalo, but this is trading that is happening, the least transformed sector of industry. How do black people have got to get a piece of that pie?
If you go to the budget vote speech, the minister talks about the fact that there's hectares of land that have to be made available to emerging black farmers in that particular space of wildlife, because it's a growing industry. And I think it's important for government to step into that space and create an enabling environment for black farmers to also play an important role in that space, because if you're going to create a sustainable industry, if you're going to create a new South Africa, if you're going to create an inclusive economy that NDP talks about, the inclusivity of that economy is also dependent on how we are able to bring into that particular economy the previously marginalized groups, which is the black farmers. And in this particular space, we're working closely with the different provinces, because those provinces are where exactly everything happens. And I think as part of our efforts, we were working extensively with different unions in that particular space, largely because we want to make sure that it's a very fair process, it's a very inclusive process, but also it's a process that also responds to the challenges that are being faced on the ground.
I got you on that one. Okay, so let's go back into the conversation about nature. I mean, obviously looking at, you know, the ecosystem in itself that is suffering. We have a cleanup campaign when it comes to Yukskay River, but do people understand, community members understand the value of actually having a clean environment? Because it doesn't help that you and I will have this conversation, but when we get out of here, someone thinks it's okay to throw rubbish on the street or to throw litter somewhere, and they've been climatized to thinking that it's okay, which goes into our rivers, etc.
Faith, the bitter truth is that over a longer period of time, black settlements have largely been seen as dumping ground for black people. And I think that's how we ended up treating our location, our townships. I mean, the National Party spoke about reserves being created for black people to bring their labor back, to bring their labor to work. And I think there's a new discourse that's emerging where we're saying we need to give the power back to ordinary South Africans. That you and I, as ordinary South Africans, if we live in the township, we need to take pride in the fact that this is an area that we live in. And I think it's about also getting ordinary South Africans to understand the fact that, I mean, when I grew up, where I grew up, the school I went to, I was told you shouldn't litter. And I think it's that campaign that we need to bring back actively at schools, because I've realized that when you work with school kids, you always have a message that is able to move from one generation to the next. And I think what I was taught when I was at school is the same message that I'm even using today when I go on roadshows.
But that's what I'm saying, that it sounds like it's an actual new phenomenon. Perhaps this is where you'll be able to tell me about the green scorpions. But that is almost like a new phenomenon, because you're right, I cannot say that the township used to be dirty. No, because you already know when you wake up, you clean the stoop, you clean the area around, you make sure that the garden is fine, you make sure that the vegetable garden is planted. So in other words, there was care that was taken. It's just that what has transformed during the years that has allowed us this, to persist, one would say.
I think, I mean, sometimes people throw cans around and say they're creating jobs. I just don't understand what it means. It doesn't mean that you're creating jobs. You're actually polluting the environment that you're living in. You're actually degrading even the very environment. I mean, if you were to buy a house, would you buy a house in an environment where people just throw litter around? You will not. It actually affects the value of the houses in that area. So at the heart of it is about individuals understanding the fact that when you litter, you are not only degrading the environment, but you also, it says a lot about you as an individual. When you throw a can of, I mean, people take a taxi from town to the township. When the taxi drives through town, they will not do anything. The minute it drives into the township, they're quite quick to roll down the windows and throw the cans out of the window. What does it say?
It means that we're not taking care of our place. Perhaps it's self-respect. Self-respect equals to environmental respect.
So government can come with a whole plethora of laws and everything, but if we as individuals
are not respecting ourselves and our environment, then there's no point in us having this.
And those who believe in the Bible will tell you cleanliness is next to godliness.